everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this episode is very popular because today we have our debate. It's a mock parliaments. We have very famous speaker for this debate, and we have a good news. Singapore leadership institutions, actually, which is head by the Professor Kirpal, they already invite us in Singapore to organize this kind of debate in Singapore in June, as well as we already start the leadership research in between Malaysia and Singapore. So I'm sure through this debate and debating process, you actually engage with a lot of communities, those who are trying to develop their futuristic leadership approach. So I so today's actually our topic. I think Okay. Today, our topic for this debate, this house believes that tech is going to save the world. We have our world famous speaker for doing this debate from the government side. We have our honorable prime minister for this parliament, Professor Rob. We have our minister of the technology from the government side, Professor Fred Philip. We have our member from the government side, Madam Dalsey. From opposition side, we have our opposition leaders, Professor Donald, Deputy Leader of the Oppositions, Mr. Adam, and Member of the Parliament from the Opposition, Professor Ching. So first, I would like to invite Professor Rob as the Prime Minister of this Parliament.
Good morning and thank you. The topic today is this House believes that technology is going to save the world. Technology has always risen to the challenge that has been put in front of it. From the beginning of the industrial age, we've had issues that we've had to address, issues of scale, issues of capability, issues having to deal with clean food, fresh water, and medicines adequate to cover our growing population. And technology has risen to address each one of those challenges as they have arisen as well. Most recently, technology showed its strength in coming up in record time with vaccines that could address a pandemic level virus that was killing large numbers of our citizens and people all across the world. And in that record time, and typically it takes a decade or more to create a vaccine, the world created it in a matter of months and was able to distribute it broadly so that the pandemic as it currently exists is under management, and the world, for the most part, with some exceptions, isn't shut down. This use of technology requires a number of things. It requires focus. We remember the moonshot, the U.S. moonshot, thought to be impossible. John F. Kennedy in the early 60s came up with the concept of, unfortunately, he died long before seeing it fulfilled, but by the end of the decade, the United States was well on its way to the moon and then subsequently went several times. It requires funding. The efforts to solve our major problems aren't inexpensive, and they require not only focus, but they require the funding to get it done. And that funding has to come with milestones to accomplishment, as well as the dedication to the goal that cuts across administrations and can allow the effort to be successful. Our focus on addressing climate change, on addressing spreading the human race to other planets to better protect against catastrophic problems that we cannot control, much like the impact of the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. We have the same kind of exposure to universal events that we currently may not be able to defend against. And by spreading the civilization to other planets, we can better assure the survival of the human race, even if the Earth is somehow destroyed or badly damaged. But it does require the focus, funding, milestones, and dedication to that accomplishment, or it won't be done. Technology and its development needs to also avoid collateral damage. We've certainly seen the development of technology, say petrochemical technology, has done a significant amount of damage to the planet. And that means any development and focus on technology needs to take into account that collateral damage and move aggressively to both anticipate that damage and to mitigate it. We can't just have technology run through and target one problem only to create a whole series of other problems. And the petrochemical market is a showcase for that issue. So focused funding, milestones, dedication, an identification of collateral damage, and an effort to avoid that collateral damage are all critical to allowing technology to advance. Looking forward, our uses of artificial intelligence, particularly artificial intelligence with back-end to quantum computers, could solve some of the biggest problems we currently are facing. Those problems include global warming, include cancer, include the creation of near immortality or immortality in humans, including digital immortality going forward. We could make death obsolete over time if we so will it. Just because technology can be used to solve all problems doesn't necessarily mean certain problems should be solved. There are things that are about our well-being and our humanity that need to be observed so we don't lose those things in the process of advancing technology and advancing our capability. So this needs to be a holistic approach where technology is focused on the problem tightly. Milestones are created and monitored to make sure we achieve them. Dedication remains in place and funding is adequate to the overall task. With those things in place, this House believes that technology is going to save the world and that can save the world and will save the world.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister of this Parliament, for your excellent speech. Now I request Opposition Leader of the Parliament, Mr. Donald.
Well, I think Rob brought up a couple of excellent points. One of them was he mentioned vaccines. Well, vaccines are absolutely wonderful technology if people use them. And I think one of the things that we've been finding is that one of the biggest difficulties with vaccines is that people won't take them. They're afraid of them. And technology, and another point that he brought up is the question of funding. Well, certainly we have a society where somebody like Elon Musk has managed to basically through a lot of somewhat underhanded means get so incredibly much money that he can protect. We'll see what happens with his ability to get to Mars, but in general, these kinds of huge projects require a huge amount of funding, and that funding has to come from people, from taxes, from people deciding that they want to fund it. And there's a lot of resistance to people paying the money that they have to be able to do things that they really don't understand in the long term. So what I'm getting at is that technology doesn't really address the problem of human nature and how human beings interact with each other. I mean, one of the problems in life is how your children are raised, how your children behave. Are your children going to hang out with children that aren't good kids? Is technology going to solve addiction? Is technology going to solve crime? And if it did, do we really want it to? There's a wonderful book. There's quite a few great books. There's the book We, Brave New World, 1984. And one I'd really like to mention that I think is the clearest is this wonderful book by Stanislaw Lem called Return from the Future. And in the book, some people go at near light speed, some astronauts, and they come back in the future. And what has happened is that they've discovered technology or invented technology that basically takes away drive to be aggressive. And so what happened is now there's a paradise on Earth. People don't fight with each other. They get together with each other. They get along. They're happy to be able to provide health care for each other. They've developed technology to create basically a paradise on Earth where everyone gets along. There's the idea of crime and other kinds of problems just doesn't happen because people don't have that aggressive drive. But they also think they're crazy to go to the stars. Like, it's that same drive to be creative and to be able to uh, to create the kinds of things that allow us to that have us go to the stars that they took away. And Lem does a beautiful job of not really judging which is better. He just kind of puts the two together next to each other. And that's what we wind up with, is kind of a moral, famous ethical dilemmas, which is that we don't really know when we make a decision what the long-term consequences of it are going to be. There were a few people who knew that raising the carbon dioxide levels was going to probably going to create global warming. But we also knew that the energy that came from petroleum would created a world that was, amazingly better for everyone than the world before. All of the energy that we're using, cars, electricity, everything, has come from petroleum. So we're constantly faced with these ethical dilemmas, and we simply can't see the future. So it's nice to believe that technology is going to solve all of our problems, and it's nice to believe that somehow we're prescient enough to be able to see the future and know what things are going to be beneficial to us in the long terms and which things are not going to be beneficial to us and create problems. But we don't. And right now, some of the technologies that we have are basically sending us down a pretty dangerous path, and we don't have solutions to them. And it's wonderful to have faith and say, well, technology's always saved us in the past and will save us in the future. But, people have faith in spirits and, their luck, all kinds of things that people have faith in. People have faith that if they buy a lottery ticket, they're gonna win the lottery and everything's gonna work out for them in the long term. But those things don't work out. So I think that I love technology. I think it's wonderful, and I think lots of good things have come from it and will continue to come from it. But the real problems in the world have to do with how complicated stuff of just humans and how humans relate to each other. And technology really doesn't have an answer for that. It really doesn't even address that. And if it does, there's a question of whether it's going to make things better or we really don't have a way of knowing that. It depends on how you look at it. There's no clear answer to it.
Thank you, Professor Donald, for your excellent speech. Now, I request our Honorable Minister of Technology, Professor Fred Philip. He is President of TANDO and world-famous professors. His contributions will be very, very helpful for today's debate. Professor Fred Philip.
Thank you, Sharif. Let me start by saying I appreciate people who have odd senses of humor, and Sharif, I believe you're one of them, to raise this particular question at a moment when one of the leaders of a major country in the world, Russia, is threatening to use nuclear weapons. That really brings the question into very sharp focus, doesn't it? All the fellows of Tando, many of whom have appeared on your show before, believe that technology and ideology are the dual drivers of social change. And this is why in my last couple of appearances on your show, Sharif, I have emphasized the importance of changing people's minds. This is the ideology part of it. Changing people's mind toward more systemic thinking, because as Rob just told us, a lot of technology advances have what he called the collateral damage. I would call them systemic effects. People who are not able to think that way, many of whom are influential in the government of my country at this moment, assess technologies only on the basis of direct effects. For example, a new food, perhaps a genetically modified food. They only care, will it kill you as soon as you eat it? Okay? Whereas a person who is able to think about collateral effects would think, well, when you eat it, what is the effect on other people? What is the effect on land use? What is the effect on the climate? And so on. So we need an ideological change of direction toward more systemic thinking. Now, in the title of our debate, are we talking about existing technology or technology yet to come? If we're talking about existing technology, then yes, the House wins. We can all just close the show and go home, because if today's technologies, including the food distribution system, the power grid, if it all disappeared in a moment, the world would come to a screeching halt. We would all be thoroughly screwed, and most of the world's population would die. But the more interesting bent on this is, what about technologies that are yet to come? Yes, every technology has good and bad consequences. The question is how we manage them. Let's take a very primal technology, fire. I live in the state of New Mexico. Right now, there are massive wildfires both in the north of the state and in the southeast. The resort city of Ruidoso is totally destroyed this week. I mean, it is just really tragic. But where would the human race be without the technology of fire? It is a matter of management. So I had read the topic of discussion before signing on, of course, but then a bit surprised that I'm assigned a role as a government minister, because we definitely need to talk about the role of government in this question, but the responsibility for technology assessment is by no means restricted just to governments. Everybody has to engage in technology assessment. Governments, corporations, NGOs, user groups, and even groups of interested constituents all have to do this. Okay, government had a role between the 1970s and the early 1990s in technology assessment in the United States. And then the neoconservative government defunded our Office of Technology Assessment. And what happens now? We have tech companies who are accelerating their development of new products and introducing them to market within what they consider to be narrow market windows. And the fact is that technology assessment takes time. And the time it takes for assessment usually exceeds the product development time plus the market window. This is the fundamental dilemma of technology assessment. So where am I going with this? Some very influential people, like the Nobel Prize winners David Baltimore and Jennifer Doudna, are advocating what we call a yellow light. I mean, don't go and don't stop, but let's take it slow and figure out who is affected by this, what geographies are affected, what are the good and bad effects of the new technology. And this regulatory role absolutely falls to government. And it's especially important for developing nations, because your usage habits, your cultures, your geography and hydrology are all different from other countries, and you need to figure out the location-specific aspects of assessing a particular technology. But I am a technological optimist, and I think that all of these things can be managed, and we will see an ongoing sustainable world thanks to technology and ideology. Our host
All
has
right. We now move to the next speaker in the opposition, since we've lost our moderator. That would be Adam. Adam, you're up on the opposition side.
Thank you, Rob. I think one of Nikola Tesla's most chilling quotes is basically, in the future, there will be many man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. I believe we are already deep into that dark age. One of the main problems is that our technology is advancing very quickly, and the speed at which it is happening is also speeding up, like a double each couple of years, and then less years than that, and so on. However, that puts us at a disadvantage because we don't have the luxury of staying in sync with that exponential growth. So there is an ever widening gap. It's already a huge gulf. Our minds cannot compete with it because this advanced technology also requires advanced wisdom, foresight, discipline, impulse control, and calculations about how to avoid disaster. So it seems that the ordinary man, woman, child is becoming more and more obsolete, which is, of course, an X risk that's being discussed in AI circles and thought experiments where we visualize AI wiping us out like we're bacteria. So I think nuclear power is a good example of this mismatch between an advanced technology and the necessary discipline, ethical and moral frameworks. Actually, having said that, humanity faces a two-headed monster. One head represents humanity's collective stupidity, where we wield these things like children with toys, who fail to see some of the worst implications and consequences. Whereas the other head represents those pockets or groups of humans who know all too well what the dangers and consequences could be. And that is precisely what they want to exploit for their own gain because they have sinister and malicious intent. We don't need to venture anywhere into any possible futures to try and warn people of what technology can do in terms of negative consequences, like we see in many sci-fi depictions. We can just look back to the very real past for examples of the worst consequences of technology. World Wars I and II, for example. But then, of course, people would say that's not the technology; it's the people behind it who are wielding it. But it all comes from the same place, though, in my opinion. It all comes from the same place. The same type of brains, human brains, that develop these technologies are also the same brains that are warlike and territorial. So with any technology, it won't be long before we see it being misused. People only 10 years before World War I started could scarcely imagine such mechanized and industrial suffering. So we should take that into account. With any technology, what is the worst suffering that X, Y, or Z cause, and how many could it affect? And then go from there about ways to restrict it to lessen the likelihood of whatever kind of technology is being considered to cause such suffering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Now I request a member from the government side, Madam Dulcie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think it's interesting that you broke us out into two different houses as well, and put me in the optimistic house, because honestly, I align more with Adam's thinking. Everything Adam said is exactly the way that I see things and I think about technology. And in fact, it's the reason why I chose to become a technologist, because I'm a woman, I'm a person of color, I have indigenous roots, I have African roots, I have all the elements of a person that is not allowed to participate in technology or has been completely discouraged over the years to try not to participate in technology. And my drive and optimism in the space is to give as much agency to people who look like me, sound like me, and live in the areas of the world that I live in, or that I traverse my life in, which is rural or urban, lower middle class to poor level people. And my entire drive has been to provide as much assistance and direction to people who are interested in getting into technology, and breaking down those barriers of entry for them, and allowing them to see that they have agency over how they can be in this space. Now, with that said, I do see some positive aspects of technology that will help us down the road. But the problem that I think a lot of technologists have, and a lot of society, the thought process a lot of society has, is separating themselves from technology, acting as if technology is something outside of us, when it's not. We created the technology. It came from our minds. We're the ones implementing these things. I do. Believe fully that we do need to have committees, regulatory committees, to kind of pump the brakes on the exponential growth that does happen with technology, because it seems to me most corporations and most governments have the Edison mentality. Can I put a meter on it and make some money off of it? And that's what we've been doing ever since. Every new advancement in technology that pushes society into a more advanced way of thinking has always been metered, and put some sort of gatekeeping on the thing. So that to me means that we need to think more about the technology of money, and what that means, and why do we need money as this meter when we're making abundance. As we're making abundance and we're providing abundance, the internet is an abundance faucet of amazing information that everybody has been able to capitalize on, and they've been trying their damnedest to figure out how to meter the hell out of it. And as we get into spatial computing, that's going to get even more treacherous and worse. And how do I control the information that is being given to me, and how do I control the information that's being taken from me? Because everybody's going to be quantified and measured and metered through every means, censoring and understanding of who you are in any space. So then we now start getting into quantum mechanics. And as we dive deeper into quantum mechanics, that's going to change the world even more fundamentally. And like, Adam said, back last century, before the industrial age really took off, people were having a hard time visualizing what that world would look like. And they made these very monstrous ideas of what the world would look like, like the book 1984 or the movie Metropolis, these concepts of what the world is going to look like once the industrial age takes over. And as we look at those images now, or read them now, a part of it is campy because of the visual, or the way it's described. But if you really break it down, it's exactly what we're going through right now. It's exactly the system that we've created for ourselves. And we saw it, we predicted it a long time ago, but we allowed it to happen because it was being driven by the pockets of a very small few that run the world, and that understand that they need to put a meter on the technology. So I'm very optimistic with technology. I just think that humans need to have a fundamental shift in the way they think about things. And I believe that quantum mechanics is going to be that catalyst to make us think differently. When we definitely have machines and systems that are more in line and in lockstep with our existence. Right now, we're dealing with latency and lag with our technology, so it's a very novelty. But once latency and lag are completely eliminated and our technology is in lockstep with us from every moment of our day, it's going to be a different story. So we really need to think about what that is. There's allegories like Snow Crash and Ready Player One, and many other ones that describe what this world is going to look like if we don't solve it immediately, and they're going to seem campy in 20, 30, 40 years from now. But those people in 20, 30, 40 years are going to go, damn it, this is the life we have now. We're constantly walking around with these glasses. We're constantly in these virtual spaces, and we're neglecting the world around us. We've become complete escapism. And I see that we're going down that road, especially with this war right now. You've got half the population really intently focused on this war, and the other half of the population going, I want to jump in the metaverse and get lost and not worry about any of this stuff. So, it's a cautionary tale. I don't know if I'm totally 100% in the positive house, but I do feel that if we all work together and we all realize that we are the technology, we as humans, we are the technology. We need to figure out how to make it better for us. And yeah, so that's it.
Thank you, Madam Darcy, for your excellent contribution. Now I request from opposition member of the parliament, Professor Ching.
I believe that technology will not save the world. In fact, technology will ruin the world without the guidance of a correct solution of value. We must leave the current age of technology and enter into the new age of social science. In the absence of a rational method of decision making, competition is the engine of progress. War is the ultimate form of competition, but there is a limit to the range of tolerance of military competition when the damage from the war outweighs the benefit, which is progress. If we look back into history, wars is the major enhancer of social progress. It's not the cause of destruction. It destroys, but it also teaches us that we need to push ahead our technology. Our world currently has exhausted the use of war to enhance progress with the development of weapons of mass destruction, in particular nuclear weapons by several nations. Currently, the war is heading into a situation which will make the self-annihilation by nuclear war a real possibility. We need a solution of arbitration based on value before we push forward with technology. We also need adult supervision of the human race. Accordingly, the leader of the world leader, that is America, are very old people, such as Donald Trump, Biden, and we can also mention Putin. So I believe we need to check our technology with solution value. That's it.
Thank you, Professor Ching. Now is the time for rebuttal. First, I request opposition leader of the parliament, Professor Donald.
Well, I'm delighted that the opposition spent so much time making my point for me. It was very helpful. They all brought up things that I wasn't going to bring up, or I didn't have time to bring up. But I think you really said deeply what I believe, which is we need a new age of social science. Because if we want to look at the most damaging technology right now, it's destroying society, and it's out of control, and there's no way that we understand to be able to change it or bring it under control. And that's Twitter, Facebook, and basically social networks. And it's artificial intelligence. I am absolutely skeptical, and I can clearly explain why general artificial intelligence isn't going to happen for a long, long, long time. It's been studied and studied and studied, and everyone's been saying, oh, it's just around the corner for the longest time, but there's very good reasons why it's not going to happen. Hahowever, artificial intelligence is still an incredible danger. And with the social networks, what happens is that they sell advertising. And that goes to something that Dulce said, which is that they have to put a meter on it. And our brains turn everything into stories. That's the way that our hippocampus actually remembers things. We have to serialize things and add emotional content to them. It's a kind of an interplay between a part of your brain called the amygdala and a part called the hippocampus, and they work together, and that's how our memories work. So so when things are presented to us as narratives, as stories, then we remember them, and they become integrated and part of our explanation and understanding of the world. So people have gotten very, very good at telling us stories to explain the world around us and to make sense of the world. And stories, a good story has conflict. And so if you tell somebody a story that's just nice and everybody's happy and everything's good, people don't remember it. It doesn't, people don't gravitate towards stories like that. They gravitate towards stories where there's conflict. And they have heroes. So the best storyteller that's happened probably in history is Donald Trump, and he has captured everyone's imagination. People that hate him, people that love him. He has been shown to have his name said more than anyone's name has ever been said in history. He is just a master at creating conflict and getting people to buy into his narratives and his stories. And he's destructive. I mean, there's absolutely no question that his stories have torn society apart. And there are people organizations like the Heritage Foundation that do nothing but create stories to try and tear society apart. And they're very good at it. And we know now that the Russians have trolls that just sit at the internet with these simple stories that try and tear our society apart. And we do the same to them. So, and this is completely out of control, and we don't know what to do about it. But as Hugh said, if we're going to be able to do it, we have to understand people's psychology and people's sociology. How do we work in groups? How do we create our identity? What is it that the rewards that we get from being able to do that? It also is something that Dulce said about us spending so much time online that we're losing our connection to the world around us. So technology's very much out of control, and it's not. We don't know. It's all well and good to say that we can sit around and we can figure out what bad things are going to happen and we're going to be able to control it. But right now, there's a very clear example of technology that's completely out of control, and we have got the faintest idea how to control it, and it's tearing society apart. So it's wonderful to have faith that technology will save us, but the empirical evidence right now shows the opposite.
Thank you, Honorable Opposition Leader of the Parliament. Now I request our Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament for closing remarks. Beside that, from our audience, they have a lot of point of information. If you
I'll
give
address
some
the questions
response.
right off the
Yes,
top.
yes. Thank you.
So let's address the questions that came in, and then I'll work on the opposition. The first question, which was actually the most fascinating in the group, is how can we create a platform for collaboration, using it to accelerate technological and environmental transformation, and then channel this innovation towards solving the big problems we're facing as a society. It's an interesting question, and the underlying issues with regard to our social media platforms are that they are all for profit events. LinkedIn is probably the closest to being a pure, a focused social media platform, mostly focused on job creation and job movement. But Facebook clearly is focused at monetizing pretty much everything. The reliability of the information is very poor, and the number of scams on the platform is incredibly high. I've been convinced for a while that Zuckerberg has a death wish with regard to that platform. Now being chased by Musk, that appears to have a death wish just overall. But if you were to create something like this, it likely would need to be a platform that was created without the profit element in place. It would have to be a multinational, a governmental project that was well funded, backed by, I'd say, the UN, but UN hasn't shown that it has teeth. But it would need to remove itself from generating profit implicitly, and instead generate profit from the ideas that come out of it and that are eventually commercialized, and so that it remains focused on advancement of technology and ideas, and less focused on eye candy and clicks and the things that I think are damaging Twitter, Facebook, and the rest. But it would need to be a platform that was multinational, kept open, kept free, and followed global guidelines as opposed to the guidelines of any government. And the focus would have to be on exactly this: collaboration, accelerating technical and environmental and advancement, and for the good of people, not necessarily, and certainly not just to exploit them. We don't have a platform like that. I have doubts whether we could create one, but that's how I would go about trying to do it: a multinational, nonprofit oriented, at least not advertising oriented platform that is focused on the goals that was highlighted in the question. Next question: which technological achievement was probably the best? Probably the creation of fire. Fire, of course, pre-existed us, but the ability to actually make our own fire really was what started our advancement as an industrial society, and started freeing us up to do other things and to create more tools. But fire was probably the creation of fire, our ability to actually start fires without burning stuff down and using it for good. Was probably the biggest single achievement that we had. I think it eclipses the wheel, which is where I might have answered initially in terms of impact. What do you think the next biggest technological advance will be? I was asked this question a few days back, and I think it will be digital immortality. The idea of being able to take a person, digitize them, and carry them off into the future. We lose an awful lot of knowledge and experience every time somebody dies. If we can stop that erosion of knowledge and experience, I think we can make some major changes in how we deal with the future. Our wars are the result of forgetting the pain of war, and except for the fact that World War II did come very quickly after World War I, we clearly have lost the sense of pain that war creates and how damaging they can be, and with the weapons, as others have pointed out, that we have created subsequently to World War II. We have the capability of destroying the planet now, and that's problematic. By keeping people available that experience these prior traumas, we have a better chance of avoiding future traumas in kind. So I think that the greatest, at least from my perspective, the biggest technological advancement in our future is digital immortality, the ability to create digital twins, if you will, of people that otherwise would pass from us, and be able to use that experience and knowledge for the foreseeable future. And from a personal standpoint, I just think it would be great to be able to talk to your grandparents long after they've passed, your parents long after they've passed, just ask for advice you didn't know to ask for when you were younger, and you can now ask for when you're older and make use of that experience that we have sadly lost. Which technology tool am I looking forward to? Well, I'm really looking forward to autonomous machines. The ability to get in a car and go to Los Angeles while reading a book or watching a movie or whatever, I'm looking forward to. And level 4 autonomy, which will allow me to do that, has been announced and will be in production in 2025 and 2026. So that's coming pretty quickly. At least that's what I'm looking for. And then finally, which new technology? Oh, it's the same question. Okay, now back to the closing. The House believes that tech is going to save the world. What does saving the world mean? I mean, to me, that means allowing the world to continue to exist past any catastrophe event, either man-made or otherwise. That's what saving the world means. And technology is a lever. As the opposition has pointed out, it can be a lever for bad as well as a lever for good. And if technology advances without control, clearly it will be a lever for bad. It can do a massive amount of harm in a very short period of time. On the other hand, technology can also be used to mitigate that harm. We've certainly seen it in the petrochemical market with regard to smog controls, the creation of cleaner fuels. The current generation of clean fuels don't seem to be as clean as they otherwise might be. But now there are efforts to take the carbon dioxide out of the air, and the fuel that the carbon dioxide to fuel effort creates is inordinately clean, surprisingly clean. It doesn't put the carbon dioxide back in the air. That means that we can use technology to mitigate the problems that technology creates. But that does mean we need to focus on that mitigation. When we create a new technology, at the very forefront should be efforts to mitigate it. When we created nuclear weapons, at the very forefront should be efforts to mitigate the impact those nuclear weapons would create, and we didn't do that. And so, while technology can mitigate the effect of nuclear war, it requires a focus. It requires what I opened up with: focus, milestones, compensation, funding. If we're going to create a weapon that can cause mass damage, we at least should be investing to the same level to create something that mitigates that mass damage, or could recover the planet once that mass damage was created. The opposition brought up that raising children has been a problem for technology because they disconnect and aren't involved. I know education institutions in the U.S. are reporting that students are coming in, even if they show up for class, they're not engaging in class, they're not doing their homework assignments, and they're not learning it at an inordinate rate. That's problematic. I think that's largely due to the fact that we are not using technology to customize learning against what the kids' needs are, and we are not using technology to define what the child's future would best be. Kids are going into school without any idea what they're going to do when they come out, and they spend 2-year schools are better because they tend to focus people on a trade, but 4 and 8-year efforts where often kids are just staying in school because they don't know what else to do. That's fundamentally wrong. A child should have a good idea of what their best path will be at any given time, and as they age, that path may change, but technology should help them find the path and help them develop the skills to be successful in that path, and a holistic life, a work-life balance. Artificial intelligence can do this. Unfortunately, right now, artificial intelligence is largely focused on increasing close rates for marketing and for managing large companies, as opposed to making better people. We're suggesting that AI be used predominantly to help people be better people, and the secondary impact of artificial intelligence should be those other things. We often opposition argued we don't understand the global impact, and so can't apply technology to the problems. That's about to change. The Earth 2 effort that's been being funded by NVIDIA is designed specifically to address that problem, to be able to, under simulation at a global level, to look at the impact of technology, both positive and negative, and come up with meaningful remedies against the problems we've already created and the problems we'll create in the future. It is the first large-scale AI-based digital twin of the planet, and it's not simple, but it's incredibly complex. But it will allow us to do environmental modeling well beyond anything we've ever done in the past, and allow us to both identify the problems and identify the least expensive, most effective ways to mitigate them. It's these kinds of efforts that can make the world a better place and help save the world. Adam, pointed out that speed of technology advancement is accelerating faster than we can adopt. It's funny. That particular argument goes back to the 1700s in the initial Industrial Revolution. In fact, if you go back and look at over history, you'll see that problem has been brought up over and over again as one that is a critical problem that will hurt whatever that Industrial Revolution was trying to accomplish. We're still here. The first Industrial Revolution didn't kill us. The second one didn't kill us. The third one didn't kill us. We're now in the fourth. Maybe the fourth will kill us, but the fact of the matter is history has proven we can innovate and overcome. We are an innovative race and a creative race, and we have adopted in the past, and we will undoubtedly adopt in the future. Of course, if we don't, we'll be gone, and it's whatever replaces will write those histories. But just because there are potholes on the road doesn't mean we should give up driving. We have the capability of filling the potholes, of correcting the problems, but it does require us to identify the problems early and resource fixing them. If we don't take the time to identify the problems and resource fixing them, then the outcome Adam and others have pointed out will be our future. The House believes that tech is going to save the world because it has saved the world in the past. It has allowed us to dig out of past pandemics. It's allowed us to dig out of food shortages. It's allowed us to dig out of shortages in medicines and remediation. Polio we have largely solved, but it does mean that we have to focus the technology on the problem, fund it, and take it through to conclusion. Many argue that we need to take into account the worst suffering that has occurred as a result of technology, though I would argue the world wars weren't the result of technology. They were the result of other things, the capture of economic resources, land, the taking of stuff from other people, or just disagreements in religion or ideology or whatever that starts wars. Technology can make those wars worse. They can also eliminate the wars. As I mentioned, digital immortality earlier in answering the earlier question, could do a great deal in keeping us from wars in the future by making it possible to talk to people that experienced wars in the past, making them visible, and convincing decision makers that war is never the answer. It just raises other questions and causes huge suffering. We're watching the war in Ukraine. I don't think I think there's global consensus that it will destroy Putin, the guy that actually created the war. And if you know that going in, you are less likely to take that path coming out. And finally, Dulce pointed out the regulation, monetizing, and information control are all critical to assuring a positive impact of technology, and that's what we propose. So the House believes that technology is going to save the world, but only if we focus on that particular outcome. We have to focus on technology applied to the problems, not be afraid of it, understand it, but not misuse it either. A misuse of technology because it is a lever and a force multiplier can do huge amounts of damage that we've seen. The only way to get through this is to focus on technology for good, fund it, measure it, and assure the outcome that we want. The Prime Minister rests.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for today's Parliament, for your excellent debate. Actually, today's debate is very, very important because World Talent Economy Forums, we are actually 100% utilizing social media. We are organizing this kind of open dialogue, class, research-related activities, policy development dialogue, and many more things. And we have to understand that how we can utilizing technology properly. I can ensure with our 526 episode of World Talent Economy Forum, last 2 years of journey, we get very good scholars from around the world. Yes, when I take class in the real world, that time many guardian actually complain, students, especially their children, they do not utilizing of social media properly, and they are actually demotivated for social media. They are not going for study and this kind of things. But when we develop this World Talent Economy Forum, now many guardians coming to me, coming to our institutions, and they say, this is the best platform. I feel secure. You have a lot of scholars and you can help our children. And trust me, we publish, even many students publishing very unique research paper with us. They are solving many unique problems. It's not 1 and 2%, it's more than thousand and thousand people from India, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from Malaysia, from Singapore. Definitely Singapore is a very advanced country, from Japan, from Australia, from Rwanda, from Jordan, from Middle East, everywhere we are getting many problems, and only because we are utilizing this technology properly. So I believe technology has both of the positive things and the negative things, but we have to know how to utilizing this technology. And because of this social media, I believe we get best of the best resources around the world. Those who attend today's debate, all of them actually very like populars with their contribution in professional life. And trust me, many countries chief, prime minister office, uh, ICT ministry, public private partnership, largest corporation from the developing world, they believe this is the ultimately way for the future. So that's why we believe that technology definitely has very good things. On the other hand, technology has many negative things. What I say that, okay, many guardian, they believe that, okay, technology is not, social media good, not good for them. Now this guardian believe that yes, this is the way to solve their educational problem of their students. And that is the beauty of technology. And that's why I believe that we are World Talent Economy Forum as a team. It's not my individual achievement. The speaker regularly, those who attend in our forum, you are contributing through your knowledge, through your debating, through your open dialogue. This is extremely valuable for the society. Many people say, hey, many talk, we do not like. No, communication is important, open dialogue is important. Even this wire or many things we can settle if we can go for open dialogue. If we can arrange open dialogue, the open discussion, many things we can settle down. So next week we will focus on futuristic leadership, because many things happening in Ukraine, in Pakistan, in Asia, in Africa. So hopefully through your contribution we can bring more solutions. Many countries have water problem, many countries has agricultural problem, many countries has health problem, we are solving it. In this COVID-19 situation, I lost my family member, my uncle and auntie. Both of them actually died because of COVID. They have diabetic. But through this World Talent Economy Forum today, we are collaborating with Irish corporations. They are solving healthcare problems, especially for the diabetics, and we offer these solutions to Bangladesh government. So that is the beautiful things of World Talent Economy Forum, beautiful things of this open dialogue. And most important thing is that we have to know how to utilizing this technology properly. And I believe through this process, we can solve millions of people problem. And what actually Professor Fred Phillips said, we also believe in that way war not be a solution, especially what we are observing in Ukraine. We are really against it. We should support Ukraine people, we should go against war, and definitely there are a lot of problem around the world. With all of your contributions, we can develop the new world. Thank you, Professor Rob, Professor Fred Philip, Professor Adam. So, like you already joined as a fellow of World Talent Economy Forum. Professor Donald, Professor Ching, Madam Dalsey, for your excellent contribution for World Talent Economy Forum. I'm sure, I'm very confident through your contributions, you are changing millions of people's life. You are uplifting millions of people from the developing world. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.